In the East, we are on the air now because President Biden has decided to exit this race. He has decided to drop out of the race for president. Sources tell us that this was a decision that the president made very quickly, posting it on social media. I want to get right to our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, has been tracking the reaction coming in. Mary, what more are you learning at this hour?
We are now finally hearing, Rachel, from Vice President Kamala Harris. And I want to make sure that we get to this entire statement, but I'm going to read to you first the most important part here, which may be that she says, "I am honored to have the president's endorsement, and my intention is to earn and win this nomination." She is very clearly in this race. As we have seen, the president, shortly after he announced that he was exiting this race, President Biden coming out and backing Kamala Harris. We have seen others within the party falling in line behind him. There has been, this delicate balance, as John Carl and others have been saying. They want to come out and make clear that the party has a plan, but they also don't want to make it look and appear to voters that this is somehow a coronation at all, because obviously this is up to the delegates. Now back to this statement. Kamala Harris saying, "On behalf of the American people, I thank Joe Biden for his extraordinary leadership as President of the United States and for his decades of service to our country. His remarkable legacy of accomplishment is unmatched in modern American history, surpassing the legacy of many presidents who have served 2 terms in office." She goes on to say that it is a profound honor to serve as his vice president, saying she is deeply grateful to him, to Dr. Biden, and to the entire Biden family. She mentions, of course, how she was friends with Beau Biden, the president's late son. That is actually how she got to know Joe Biden, was through his son. She speaks about Joe Biden as the kind of father and the kind of man that he was. She speaks about the qualities that Beau revered in him, his honesty, his integrity, his big heart, and his commitment to his faith and his family. And she describes what the president is doing here. She says, "With this selfless and patriotic act, President Biden is doing what he has done throughout his life of service, putting the American people and our country above everything else." From there, she goes on to announce her intention to earn and win this nomination. She adds to that, saying, "Over the past year, I have traveled across the country talking with Americans about the clear choice in this momentous election." She says, "And that is what I will continue to do in the days and weeks ahead. I will do everything," she says, "in my power to unite the Democratic Party and unite our nation to defeat Donald Trump." She adds, "We have 107 days until Election Day. Together we will fight, and together we will win." A very clear message from Kamala Harris that she is in this race and in it to win, Rachel.
Our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, tracking the very first reaction from Vice President Kamala Harris. For those who are just joining us now, we are on the air because President Biden has decided to exit the race. There was this period of time where we were hearing from the president saying that he would step aside, and that we also heard from him saying that he was going to endorse his own Vice President Kamala Harris, but we had yet to hear from her. What Mary Bruce just reported there was the very first reaction from the Vice President of the United States, making her intentions absolutely clear that she is in this race, that she plans to run. We heard from our ABC Terry Moran about some of the shadow campaigning that's already happening when it comes to who will possibly be her running mate. I want to bring in now our chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Carl. Jonathan, your reaction to this news, Vice President Kamala Harris, no surprise here. She's making it very clear that she wants to be in this race.
And she was deliberate. She was deliberate about this. She took a beat, wrote that statement, which is, of course, not only reacting to the political earthquake of Joe Biden saying he's not running, but making it very clear, declaring she is running for president. It's probably the quickest declaration of a candidacy for president we've ever seen, but she is running. She has to erase all doubt about that. She has now significant endorsements of President Biden, former President Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, a number, small number, but a number of very key Democratic senators. And making it clear that she expects that there will be a process. I mean, the delegates have to vote. Whether anybody stands up to run against her, that remains to be seen. But Kamala Harris is as close to being the presumptive Democratic nominee as you can be without actually having a single actual delegate in your column.
And John, let me ask you to that point, how likely is it that we will see someone try to challenge her for the Democratic nomination, given the tight period of time that we have until the actual election?
I think that some of the big names that we have been discussing, emerging national leaders in the party who would have been likely if this had happened a year ago to take on a full primary challenge against Kamala Harris are less likely, unlikely to make that move because they see that she's the prohibitive favorite. People like Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan or Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, Andy Beshear of Kentucky. As we noted, they all put out statements thanking Joe Biden for making the decision he did, paying tribute to him, and not mentioning Kamala Harris. But for any one of them to take a step forward right now to run against Kamala Harris would be a very big move. It would be entering in as a real underdog and risking alienating the person that within a couple of weeks' time may well be and is likely to be the Democratic nominee. So I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if somebody gets in, but I don't think that the major contenders that we had been thinking about, for a long time and looking at the possibility that Biden would get out, we'll get into this. I think this is really Harris's nomination to lose and unlikely to face any significant opposition.
John, thank you. I want to bring in now our White House correspondent, Mary Alice Parks. Mary Alice, you've been doing a lot of reporting on the convention and also the virtual roll call. And there was so much back and forth in the days prior to the president dropping out of this race, where you had some Democrats that really wanted to push this back. They wanted to delay it. You had others that wanted to move forward with it. Bring us up to speed on where this stands now.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Rachel. Instead of a traditional plan where delegates all gathered together in a convention hall would go state by state in person and announce that their delegates were voting as was made clear from their primary results, that traditional roll call we can all picture, sort of that celebratory moment where delegates are all together. Democrats had planned and still today are planning, as far as we know, on a virtual roll call where basically ahead of the convention, the delegates would take this out of the way. They would formally nominate Biden through basically a big Zoom call where the state delegates, where the state sort of party chairs and the delegates would cast their delegates and cast their votes so that the convention was just a rubber stamp, just a formality. This was controversial, to say the least. It was a plan put in place because of an original concern around a ballot access deadline in Ohio. People in Ohio said that was sort of overblown, that it had been fixed, but nonetheless, we know the party was going forward with this plan to basically get the nomination done before the convention. And then in the last few weeks, when we had so much concern in the Democratic Party, especially on Capitol Hill, so many members of Congress that were really hoping for what we saw today. They were hoping that the president would step aside and step out of this race. They began to really push back on this plan and definitely wanted to make sure that the virtual roll call would not happen any sooner than right before the convention. And so you're right, we saw these letters circulated on Capitol Hill where Democrats said to the party, you cannot move this up. We believe we still can push the president out of this race, essentially. And they did not want delegates casting any votes until the last possible moment. They wanted to see if, frankly, the president would come around to this decision that he made today. And what we know right now is that nothing is set in stone. I've been asking staff members at the party, at the convention, at multiple levels of the party, what the process will be going forward. And what I'm told is that, frankly, it is all still up in the air. We know that the Rules Committee with the party is set to meet this week to finalize the plan, and that most likely they will still hold this virtual roll call. At least that has been the assumption that all these staff members are working under. It will fall the first week of August in the days right up to the sort of in-person convention there in Chicago. But if there is a challenge to the vice president, if all of a sudden we do start to see a real primary, Rachel, I could see more pressure put on the DNC to scrap these plans altogether, to let this play out in person, again, to have more time for the party to debate any possible primary, to vet any possible options, to have delegates consider a real contested primary here. Because like you've been talking about with Mary Bruce and with John Carl, there are members in the party who do think it'll be a mistake if it looks like a coronation There's so many, especially in the progressive wing of the party, that have deep skepticism of the DNC, of the Democratic Party, of people they think have too long sort of kept voters from being a part of the process. And so if it looks like there isn't any process now, will that actually hurt in unifying the party? But so far, we know that they are still planning on that virtual roll call, but we are tracking all of it, Rachel.
Mary Alice Parks, we know that you'll continue to stay on top of it because there are just so many questions here, from the convention to what this means for the Democratic race for president. It has been whiplash for everyone, not only within the party, but also across the country, as Americans are turning on their televisions now.